Well, maybe before we get started, then since we're just waiting for one other presenter, maybe we could just go around the room here and just do really quick introductions. So, right to my immediate side here is Vanda. Why don't you kick it off, Vanda?
Okay. So afternoon, everyone, or morning, depending on where you are. I'm Vanda. I'm a Dynamics business analyst, and I work with the various delivery teams for a Microsoft partner. I've been working with Joe and Tanya and Will to some extent over the last 12 months or so, and Nancy Calder with these Dynamics meetups. So looking forward to the content and looking forward to a bit of networking, and I'll pass it on back to you, maybe Tanya.
Okay, thank you. Will, why don't you take it?
Sure. Hi, everybody. For those I haven't met before, I'm Will. I'm in Toronto. I'm the Azure AI engineer and data scientist. So I've been working with AI for a long time and get to chat with you guys a little bit about that today. So I won't go through too much, but yeah, thank you to the group for having me on. I'm really excited.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Kandarp, do you want to just briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. This is Kandarp Vaishnav, Principal Consultant at Velocio. I've been working there as a solution architect and spending a lot of my time now on a Copilot Studio, making sure agents work the way they're supposed to be, and I customize them as well. And on a fun time or spare time, I'm working on a cool tool for Exxon Toolbox for community. So that's an exciting thing.
Awesome.
Maybe
I love that.
Awesome.
I can give a demo at the end if we have some time.
Great. And Holly and Anessa, I assume you're fairly new to the Dynamics user community. So, so there's a few presenters on this panel, but then there's we tend to try to get the audience to share who they are as well. So share what you like, Holly. But I know that you're newer to the Dynamics user groups.
Yeah, sure. My name is Holly Fleischer. I'm the administrative director at the Corey firm, and we are a Microsoft background shop, but we are probably not using nearly as much of it as we ought to be. So
okay,
here to hear as much as we can.
It's learning curves, right? So awesome. Thanks for coming. And Anessa?
I am, God, what's my title? I don't know, Managing Director of Investment Operations with the Corey firm. I've been with the company not that long, almost 2 months now. I am very new to the group. I work a lot with Microsoft Dynamics in different variations. And I am very much want to learn more because I do understand it changes every moment.
Okay, we're here to help.
We're never on top.
Thank you. All right, Danny, do you have a second just to introduce yourself? Optional. Okay, Joe, we're going to introduce you during the session, so I'm skipping you. Rue, do you want to just do a quick hello? No worries, Danny.
Artur has joined us as well. That's another one that's welcome.
Yeah, I see Vanetta. Hi, Vanetta. Welcome. Do you want to say hi?
I do. Hello. I'm Vanetta Kersey, Managing Director at Broken Brow, investment firm in Richmond, Virginia. We work with Dynamics through Salentica, and I'm just interested in keeping up with the changes and learning more about AI for sure.
Awesome. Thanks for joining today. Thank you. And Artur, do you want to say a quick hello? All right. No worries. We don't mind shy. That's okay too. So, Vanda, I'm going to kick things off. Maybe you could just ping Liz and ask her to join when she's available, and I'll just get going. Okay. Thank you so much.
You make us start. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's just get started here. I'm Tanya Tygesen. So I help organize these meetups for just general knowledge and general community and engagement. I do have a day job as well. I work for a company called SS&C, and I am a senior director in the client engagement area. So everyone can see my screen okay? All right, so just a little bit about the Dynamics user group. So the DUG is what we call it. So it is an organization that just brings together people globally, like truly a global organization. Not everybody knows about it, so our goal is to also make sure everybody is aware of just this whole amazing community of pretty smart people, and everybody with a single mission of just awareness around the whole Dynamics platform. So it has a long, rich history, and it's meant for you. So we all try to hop on these meetups or join these events, but it's an incredible organization and lots of opportunity to get involved for sure. So as you can see, there's 47,000 members and growing exponentially. I remember early days when there were not that many members, so it's phenomenal. So there's lots of different opportunities to participate in the DUG program. So you can see there's forums, there's conferences, there's meetups like this one we're doing. Sometimes there's in-person meetups in your local areas as well. There's content on YouTube. There's opportunities for education. So there's a lot of support, a lot of like community-based programming. And one thing I will always say is there's always a need for speakers. There's always a need to get involved. If this is something that you're interested in, this is a great place to start, and it's a great way to navigate through different areas. The different groups also focus on different parts of the Dynamics platform. So you'll see Business Central, customer engagement, finance and supply, which I think is F&O now, Dynamics GP, or maybe that's the F&O one, and then Power Platform. So lots of silos of information. The group today that we deal with, a lot of times it's primarily the customer engagement, but we actually dive into different applications through our meetups as well. So lots of opportunity to learn, sit on the sidelines, actually participate, and more. So the one thing that is really nice is all these regional meetups that we host as well. So sorry, we being the Dynamics user group hosts, we're just a little tiny part of it in our meetup. So
Tanya,
if you, yeah,
sorry, just to interrupt you. Liz has actually joined us, so she's there and available if you're ready to.
I'm gonna hand it over to Liz. Perfect.
love
I
Liz
can't
doing
see. I've got two monitors and I can't see anything anymore because I'm in
No worries,
presentation
she's
mode.
just
But
joined
thank
us,
you,
so
Vanda.
that helps. Thank you. Hello, Liz.
Oh, I don't know. Tanya was doing such a wonderful job. I am so I am so sorry. I apologize
problem.
profusely. My calendar invite meeting reminder did not go off. So thank you for covering for me while I joined. As Tanya was mentioning, we do offer DynamicsCon regional events. You can see the list here of our North America ones. If you happen to be outside of North America, our next slide shows the international locations that we will be going to. All of our DynamicsCon regional events are free and they are full day events. They're kind of a supercharged local user group, if you will, and they offer multiple products, multiple tracks, and rooms of content with multiple sponsorships, of great lunch, usually a reception as well. So if you're located near one of these locations, we would love to host you for free for a day of wonderful education. Also coming up is our annual DynamicsCon conference. This is going to be happening the week of May 13th in Chicago, Illinois, here in the United States. And if you have not been to DynamicsCon in the past, it is a fantastic event. We are expecting 3,000 attendees this year with over 350 sessions. It's going to be fantastic. And just for you today, we have a special discount code, 15% off when you use the promo code MEETUP15. So very quick, and I am now going to pass it back to Tanya to get started with today's content. Yes,
Terrific.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to say, I know Will and I will be at DynamicsCon this year. Joe, I don't know if you decided if you're going to be heading to Chicago. Yeah, awesome. Vanda, I think it's a bit of a hike for you to come from Spain. So you'll probably not be there, but there will be a number of us there. So it'll be a great opportunity to kind of meet in person as well. So I'm looking forward to it. So, and I know Will is going to be on the stage there too, so which is great. And Joe, I think you're on stage too, right? Yeah, awesome. Okay, all right, so let's get started. I think based on the time right now, there is a strong possibility we might not get through all of the content today. So I'm third in line intentionally that if there's not enough time, my content is in the deck, but we might not get to everything today just because we've got a lot planned in here for 1 hour. We used to do a format of 90 minutes, and then some of the feedback we got, or the registration kind of fell off when people thought they had to commit 90 minutes to it. So we went back to 1 hour format. So at the end of the session today, we will have a feedback survey. We really do appreciate if you can spend a minute just going through the questions and just giving us some feedback. We want to make these as useful for our audience as possible. We can talk all day long, so we can fill an hour and a half of time. So, but we know everybody has a day job, so so just help us improve, and let's get started. So I'm going to pass it over to Will Hawkins as our first presenter, Mr. AI as I call him, and he's going to help us go through some best practices in planning for your next AI move. So Will, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Amazing. Thank you, Tanya. You're driving the slides, right?
I'm driving the slides.
Cool. Yeah, so as Tanya mentioned, I'm going to talk about something super boring today called artificial intelligence. We're going to go through some different aspects of it, primarily around the design before you get in to start using this stuff. I believe some people have already mentioned that they're using Copilot Studio. Feel free to put in the chat if you've started using AI, any experiences that you have. I've touched every part of the Microsoft AI stack, so I'm happy to support wherever you are in that. And then, yeah, we're going to go through a bunch of content around the actual governance of AI, so actually putting that into practice, talking about some risks that both Tanya and I have discovered from having conversations with different clients, and then going through some best practices and actually applying those best practices in real time to Microsoft AI technologies. So if you want to hit the next slide. So if we haven't met, it's really great to meet you. Like I said at the beginning, I'm Will Hawkins. I'm based in Toronto. I'm an Azure AI engineer, fabric engineer, and data scientist. I have my own company, RitewAI, and we work with ISVs, partners, and customers to implement AI of different kinds across the stack. And I also recently was named a Copilot Studio MVP. So if you have any questions about Copilot Studio, I can do my best to help you there. Have a book too that came out last year. That's just about what happened with AI in the last couple of years. But anyways, that's enough about me. Let's go into what we're all here for, which is getting a better understanding of how we get started in this crazy AI world that we're now all finding ourselves in. So these are a couple key things that, after working with clients for a couple of years now, kind of came out as being the reason why AI is so important for planning. I mean, you can see, planning is so important for AI. You can see from the graphic that the overall pace of innovation has just increased exponentially in the last couple of years. I mean, some clients that I work with, the model that we start working with, whether that be GPT-4 or GPT 3.5 Turbo, by the time we finish the project, we're using a different model because, the big players have released something that is 10 times better. And, that obviously creates a lack of understanding. And that tends to be the case that I've found with a lot of different clients, is there's just a really large gap in knowledge in terms of how this stuff works, how it fits into different business applications, right? You guys are part of the Microsoft family to one extent or another. So you've seen, there's Copilots everywhere. They're adding new Copilots all the time. And that lack of competency definitely creates a lack of direction. So having an AI governance framework or a plan of some kind is really just about having a point of reference for the organization to leverage, right? It's basically to just get people on the same page about what kind of tools they can use and how to use them. And then if you don't have this kind of stuff in place, it's very hard to get investment dollars. Like I mentioned, I work with independent software vendors or ISVs. So anytime they want to add stuff into solutions, or even customers that want to bring AI bolt-ons, they're usually meeting with executive leadership or a board, and without a clear, detailed structure of how you're going to get from point A to point B with this technology, it's just a buzzword. And it's obviously not a season. I think we can all see that it's now had tremendous impacts in the last couple of years, and that's going to stick around. So having long-term intentions is incredibly important. And then the other part of planning is being able to secure your solution by default. So AI red teaming is probably a term that most people aren't super familiar with, but it essentially means that you work on securing your AI by testing out different kinds of attacks to see where your points of vulnerability are. So we're going to talk a little bit about adversarial testing closer to the end, but in a nutshell, it's designing your AI solution to have defense mechanisms and building that into the entire life cycle of using your AI products. This is primarily more of a development thing. Obviously, when you're using something like Copilot Studio, a lot of these safeguards are built in for you, but nonetheless, it's important information. So if you get next slide, Tanya. So what are some of the common risks that happen when you're not planning the stuff appropriately? So I've kind of devised a spectrum from more business risks to technological risks, since a lot of the clients that I work with ends up being anything from business obsolescence all the way to, you know, is this thing going to get hacked, right? Those are very different conversations. So a couple key terms here that I wanted to define for you guys is AI washing. I came across this recently, actually, because there's been some reports in the SEC landscape around companies having AI or marketing AI and not really having a substance behind it. And the term actually comes from what was called greenwashing, which is essentially companies were saying their products were eco-friendly, primarily as a marketing buzz. And I'm sure we've all come in contact with websites that say .ai. And so that's one of the risks that can happen from a business leadership perspective, because obviously most companies are not trying to end up in that boat, right? We're all trying to establish a great relationship with customers and ensure that, you know, they're all on the same page about how things are being used. Another key aspect is a lot of pilots never leave the lab. I've seen this with a few clients where you can get to 60% of a solution and then that last 40% can take years. So knowing how to manage that and having the right plan is incredibly important for that. Another key one that I wanted to highlight here is AI literacy. I know with different organizations I've worked with, you got the super users that have used ChatGPT or Copilot since day one and are absolutely great at writing prompts. And then you have people that have opened it maybe one time just to play with it and ask it some silly questions. And that often is the spectrum that organizations deal with when it comes to the competency on how to use AI effectively. So having that blueprint, having that point of reference really allows people to understand how it fits into their work moving forward. And that's a great way of getting people educated on where they need to upskill. And then finally, on the far right side of the technical section, there's data leakage and cross-prompt injection attacks. So these are primarily data protocol stuff. So really just, and as we'll talk about a bit later, like where's the data living? Is it being moved? Is there opportunities that nefarious actors can come in and steal that data and leverage it? And those are much more on the technical side. But in essence, without the right plan, these are any of the things that you could experience, any or all. So it's definitely a good idea to have something in place. So if you want to jump to the next slide, Tanya. Cool. So that's where we get to the conversation around AI governance. I define AI governance as a framework for regulating and using AI in an organization. So it's your dynamic principles, policies, and practices for guiding the ethical, responsible, and effective implementation of these technologies within the organization. And a better way of looking at it is it's really just setting up the rules for having a new team member. I mean, we're seeing this more and more with agents, as agents are now becoming operatives in an organization. And I don't know if anybody's looked at agent workforce stuff at all, but you know, as you start to build these, having guardrails, having rules around how they can be leveraged is pretty important. And then a more important aspect of AI governance is it's actually an asset for building trust with customers and internal operatives. I actually have a friend that owns a company that's AI focused, and she actually put out a white paper for the company that just said, hey, this is how we use AI in our marketing. This is how we use AI in our organization, and we want you to be aware of that so you don't feel like there's any barrier to trusting the way that we leverage AI in our organization. So it can take a lot of different forms. It's not just one document that says, you know, here's the rules of using AI. It's really a mindset and an action plan that's going to allow you to facilitate the right management of AI innovation in your organization. So if you want to jump to the next slide, Tanya. Cool. So how does having this solution or this framework help combat risks that we looked at a bit earlier when it comes to AI solutions? So you can have a look at this, the source of this image later, but it's coming from an article that some of you may or may not heard. It's a pretty infamous story about AI bias, where a healthcare company was designing an algorithm to help hospitals and insurance companies identify which patients would benefit from a high-risk care management program. So essentially allocating extra primary care visits for closer monitoring, just adding extra resources for people that need it. And the algorithm's designers used previous patient healthcare spending as a proxy for medical needs. They assumed that if you were spending a lot of money at the hospital, that meant that you were therefore needing extra care, which I think inherently makes sense for a lot of people. What they didn't realize was that because lower income African American patients record healthcare costs that are similar to those of healthier white patients, i.e. that their healthcare costs are lower due to socioeconomic barriers, that they were actually biased in terms of who was being selected for the program. They were actually missing a lot of lower income African Americans, not because the designer of the algorithm was racist or anything like that. It's just pure lack of awareness, right? This is why, you know, we are essentially teaching AI to be flawed, imperfect decision makers, because that's what it means to be human. And that's really, at the end of the day, what makes AI governance so significant, is not that you're putting the right things in place so that you're not liable. It's so that you're covering the bases that you wouldn't really think of otherwise. So you want to jump to the next slide, Tanya? Perfect. And particularly, how does this governance approach help you minimize leakage and residency challenges, right? I know Tanya and I have talked quite a bit about this, and that is one of the risks that were outlined in that spectrum that you saw earlier. Data is the gold, right? It's the gold that runs your business, and losing that or having it be put in other places creates a lot of financial, legal, all kinds of different kinds of challenges that can make it very difficult to adopt this technology. And that's where AI governance really shines, because a well thought out AI governance framework provides a collective understanding of the technology, like how it actually works from a usability perspective. It's giving you clarity on how the models work. I know this is something I've talked with clients recently, like what's the input, or what's the input, what's the output? When we know the input and the output, we know exactly what the model is responsible for doing and how that therefore contributes value to the system. So having that framework in place is really about giving people the understanding to know what data is valuable and what makes it valuable and how it needs to be set up to do so. And that really informs the data governance framework, right? You actually now have a reason to leverage your data outside of being used for reporting and archiving and operations. So you're designing your AI governance framework around the usefulness when it comes to AI solutions. And that really helps address gaps in your data governance framework, because you're creating a data-loving paradigm. I recently came back to this quote, and I'm sure many people have heard of it, or this phrase, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And if you look at what's happening today with cybersecurity incidents, a lot of it is your data being held for ransom, or people being impersonated. There's a lot of AI deepfakes that are just, you know, stealing other people's data, right? That's why data is so important, and why it's definitely needs to be loved by an organization, because it is the information that drives everything. So being able to address these gaps and make sure that, you know, your model is not based in a region that you lose access to your data the minute it goes there, or that you don't have the right AI entry tool to ensure that, you know, there's not data being leaked upon capture, right? Like fields aren't being missed and information's being missed from the system. Like I know I worked with a client recently where they had a questionnaire that they would have their customers fill out, but because fields not being configured correctly, the system was missing a lot of the reports. Like it would just not put in any information because the report wasn't filled, or the questionnaire wasn't filled out the way that they had designed it to, and that was a massive risk for them. I was like, well, you can't run AI solutions on top of this because you're losing all the data. It's just leaking out of the system. So that's where a governance framework is really handy, because it provides that competency, it provides that education to know how valuable your data is and to know how to set it up in a way to be leveraged by these solutions. So if you want to go ahead to the next one, perfect. And a byproduct of that, I find, is that it actually really helps you figure out how to purchase third-party tools, because by understanding how important and how valuable your data is, it really helps people that are looking at buying note-taking softwares or ChatGPT subscriptions, right? They know how the models work, so they know what's the most important part. Like, where does my data go? How does it how is it affected by not having it in my organization, right? Like, if you're investing in a SaaS tool, like a platform that you're putting all of your data into, what are they going to be doing with it? How long do they retain that information? Is there retention policies? Is the SaaS third-party tools retention policies going against your data governance framework, right? And then, how are they keeping up with changes in the technology? Are they introducing new things in the roadmap that keep up with the changes in model technology? I worked with a client before Copilot was even a thing, and we were working on building this self-service chatbot, and we were running into lots of problems around being able to index the how-to documents correctly. And he was like, well, I don't understand. Why is it so hard for this tool to process the documents? I can go to marketing bots and have it just read my PDFs and give me summaries. And that third-party tool became redundant the minute that you could upload PDFs to ChatGPT. And nowadays, it's very common for there to be a lot of other tools that you can just inherently put a PDF in and you don't have to think twice about it. So that's why being able to look at the longevity of these third-party tools is incredibly important, especially if they're going to have your data, right? There's a client that I work with that is in the process of working with some legal third-party solutions, because those third-party solutions by contract actually own their customers' data. And that's obviously a massive risk and liability. So having these, having that framework that allows you to think about the importance of your data and how it's leveraged is going to help you inform on what things you should be buying and which things you should be staying away from. So to really summarize it all, having the right AI governance framework is just a clear, documented, agile organizational plan that's going to manage AI innovation effectively, right? It's going to give you the ability to put those guardrails in, measure impact, and safely use the innovation that's come to us in an effective way. So let's jump into best practices, since that's obviously a lot of what is important when it comes to the planning aspect of it. So no surprise, people are a very important part of that. At RitewAI, we're very much in belief that AI is there to empower the human in the loop, not replace them, especially now that agentic capabilities is coming out. And so it's really important to recognize that it's not a tool, it's a strategy. Renee Murphy is a pretty, at least from my understanding, well-known person that works for Verdantix, which is an independent research body. And I was recently part of a webinar that she was doing on AI risk management. And that was a key thing that Verdantix talked about, was a lot of companies are just trying to bolt on the tool where they can and not think twice about it. And they're missing out on the long-term vision, the important intentions that need to be set from an organizational perspective to ensure that the technology is utilized to the best of your abilities. And that really comes down to the executive leadership, setting an organizational vision and spending the time to be educated. I mean, a lot of the work that I do today is working with executives to just teach them basic things like prompting and how a model processes your data, what training looks like, what happens when you need to train a large language model versus a machine learning model. And it starts at the top. There needs to be a clear vision and intention about, what are we actually trying to do with this moving forward. And then having diverse stakeholders at the table, obviously critical. If we go back to that healthcare example, right? If there was other people doing an analysis of that data, perhaps there would have been somebody that captured the correlatory factor of, hey, yeah, they don't spend as much because they don't go to the hospital as much. So having those extra set of eyes is definitely critical when it comes to the different biases, because different people are going to interpret things differently. And that's where you start to see an objective perspective emerge, is when you have the right people at the table. And then one thing that's really, or sorry, if you can go back, Tanya. One thing that's really important is having people that actually own the input, the process, and the output. AI generates new data, so who's actually going to be responsible for owning that data is a very important consideration. And then finally, being able to educate your project managers on the kinds of operation changes that have to occur when using models, like model versioning, is key. So more or less getting people at the table that have their own specific specializations and are educated enough to understand how to use and leverage the technology and the workflows. Sorry, you can go ahead now. Of course, there's processes, right? Processes are incredibly important, particularly when it comes to having a system for the different aspects of your AI governance framework. So these are some of the key systems that I've helped clients develop when it comes to their AI governance frameworks, is having one for use cases, right? Having a very clear decision framework for, hey, somebody uses Copilot and they're like, hey, I want to build an agent that the organization can use. What's going to be your way of evaluating, is this impactful? Is it feasible? Is it something that we want them to spend time on? Having a system for measuring different kinds of KPIs, right? You want to have a pretty clear picture on the efficacy of your solutions. So a concept that maybe some of you are familiar with is green dollars versus blue dollars. So is this a tool that's going to create green dollars, which is revenue generation, or blue dollars, which is more about cost optimization from a process perspective? And actually, at the conference I was at last week, I was speaking with one of the Microsoft reps, and they've actually found the biggest return on investment is business to customer solutions compared with business to business or business to employee, because business to customer just has a larger ROI from their statistic base. So having systems that are informed on these kinds of measurements is obviously incredibly important. And then having a system for risk management. So that webinar that I mentioned, they proposed ISO 31000, which is a good basic generic risk management framework that you can apply to AI super easily. That's where you're going to throw in your red teaming. So that's where you're going to include adversarial testing, where red teaming is really just you providing attacks on your own AI system in order to understand its vulnerabilities. It's good to have model lifecycle management. So that's your machine learning and your large language model operations. So knowing how you want to version your models, and then having some kind of process to continue to improve on this stuff. Because as we've all seen, the technology is improving at an even more alarming rate every day. So having these systems or something similar to it is definitely a good place to start when you're putting together an AI governance framework. Perfect. And obviously you have to be able to check in on that. So I kind of look at it from two lenses. You have your qualitative and your quantitative performance. And qualitative comes down to organizational habits. So that includes continuous education. Are people trying to organize lunch and learns? Is there regular AI discussions and meetings? Are you having monthly town halls where people can just talk about it? Is there a data stewardship team? Like, are people doing, regular checks for data quality, ensuring that you're not succumbing to human error and having data that's entered wrong and people having to go clean it, because if it touches the AI solution and it's wrong, that could create a hallucination. So those kind of people-driven habits are incredibly important. And then on the quantitative side, you've got lots of things you can monitor. You can monitor data drift, which basically says, is this data still representative of the reality that the business is facing today? You can monitor for bias. You can monitor for explainable AI, which if you haven't seen anything on that, it's essentially, is it really easy to see how the AI showed its work? You can also monitor data loss prevention policies. So again, going back to that leakage, is there anywhere where data is being duplicated or put in places that it really shouldn't? And then one final one that's really important for monitoring is the difference between the data that you train a model on and the data that the model is run on. And what I mean by that is I actually read this from Andrew Ng a long time ago, where you could train a model to classify whether it's a cat or a dog, and you could take thousands of images off of Google Images to train it on the difference between a cat and a dog. And then you could take a picture of your cat upside down, and it might call it a dog because it's never seen that before. It's never seen a picture of the cat in that particular angle or that particular position. So that's another thing to be monitoring is the data that I'm providing to my model representative of what the current reality is in that particular scenario. So if you want to jump to the next one, Tanya, there is lots of monitoring tools that Microsoft has available. I've put a few up here. Copilot Control System is a fairly new one. That's a good way for tracking usage and adoption of your different kinds of agents. In the M365 Admin Center, they have some stuff. They have usage reports and license management, so you can see how many licenses are assigned and who's actually been using it. I do know from speaking with Microsoft that they are going to be putting more tools in there at some point. Not exactly sure what the timeline is for that. In Dynamics, there is lots of different buttons and enablers for different Copilot features. I just put Sales Hub as an example here, but this applies for service. I know when I did a demo recently for Doug at the Toronto Regional, we did a customer service example, and I had to spend probably an hour going in and turning on and turning off different AI features in the customer service center. So lots of different controls in there. PPAC stands for Power Platform Admin Center. So if you're a Power Platform user by any means, so many features in there. I put links because it's much easier to just look at the different controls. And then if you use Azure at all, one thing that I'm starting to leverage with customers that are on Azure AI is just looking at responsible AI from their dashboard. They've got lots of different metrics there that are more statistics driven. So there's lots of different monitoring capabilities that are available. So let's actually put some of this into practice, since we've now kind of understood some of the principles of what makes AI governance effective and how to use it. Tanya, if you want to jump ahead to the next slide. I've basically put together 3 different examples from different personas, because clients that come to me tend to be ones that are trying to buy out-of-the-box solutions, they're trying to create their own, or they're trying to extend using Copilot Studio. So here's a good example of a buying situation, right? I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Project Sophia. We talked about it last year around this time. So it was a solution that Microsoft came up with to try out a bunch of different AI research features. And you can actually see now that part of it's been siphoned off into what's called the Sales Research Agent and Sales 365, and that's new as of last week. So some of the key questions that I would be asking if I was looking at purchasing something like this is, does it come with my Sales 365 license? Is using this agent better insulated in my data? Like, is it using it in Dynamics? Is that better than using it in the actual web application because I don't have to move my data out of the system that it's in? Is there adequate documentation so that my sellers that want to use this know how to use it appropriately? Do they have the ability to configure, and can it be extended if we wanted to do some customization on it? So good things to think about when you're applying this AI governance stuff. You can jump ahead, Tanya. And then you've got more of the building.
But you don't let her talk.
What's that?
You keep asking her to jump in, but don't let her talk.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Tanya, feel free to jump in whenever you want. I was getting lost in the sauce.
Nope, it's all good, Will. I'm good. I've got lots of questions afterwards. Don't worry. It's all good.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so if you're more on the developer side, this is some new tools that have come out for actually having an AI control your computer. So a good example of questions to ask if you're doing AI development is, does this new API affect the code base? Are there situations where users could benefit from this kind of agent? If you have an AI SaaS already, is this something that you'd want to extend to users? So just really wrapping your head around, how does it change the current development plan that we're trying to put in place when building our AI solution? And then Tanya, if you want to jump to the next one. And then finally, for those that are kind of in the middle, not necessarily buying and not necessarily developing from scratch, you've got, your Copilot Studio tools, which are now coming out with new things that you can add in agent flows into an existing agent. So this is an example that's really important for clients that I'm working with now, because, if you have a Power Automate flow or a workflow that you want to incorporate into your AI solution, you're now able to do that. So you'd be looking at things like, does this allow me to extend current copilots that I've developed? Maybe the sales research agent could benefit from another workflow you have. Can I just put those two together using something like this? So yeah, if you want to jump ahead, Tanya, to really bring it all together, if there's anything that you really take away from all of this, is, if you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail, especially when it comes to AI stuff, because there's a lot of information and stuff that needs to be brought to the surface to be able to use this stuff effectively. You definitely want to have a framework that, standardizes and makes governance an important part of your AI vision moving forward. By having that clear framework, you're creating organizational competency, which informs data governance, which informs the data governance framework to be about loving your data, which minimizes data leakage and residency and creates policies for helping you buy the right AI tools. And then people, process, and performance. If you have those three aspects of a governance framework, you're in good shape. I think that's about all I got. So I will open the floor up for everyone. And Tanya, hopefully I didn't cut you off too much.
No, that's all good. I think just one of the things that is really, well, many important things you've talked about, but I think one of the things for certain types of industries is data residency. So you mentioned that a little bit earlier, and when you look at Copilot, people might feel like just using the copilots in Dynamics, for instance, the data is going to be in the Dataverse, but the way that Microsoft has designed the Copilot databases is for Canadians, there's a real impact because parts of the Copilot, like the prompts and so on, sit in the US databases, not in the Canadian databases, where in Canada, you can say, I want my CRM to be geographically located in Azure tenants there or Azure sites for Canada, but there is some, you have to dig deeper into, well, where is all of the data? And data can mean different things. It's not just the PII that you have. Is a prompt considered your data, and where does that library live, for instance? So I think the data residency is less of an issue on the American side because it's already supported with that geography, but other geographic locations, it might be a problem until Microsoft says, okay, we're going to extend our reach in those areas. So I think the data residency part is really interesting here. And then I think really, like, who owns the data? Where is it? And is it a streaming experience? Is it actually sitting in a database? Is it using up a lot of the space in my database because now we're just throwing a bunch of data in it after the fact? So I think there's a lot. There's always, it's an evergreen topic. Is every time I talk to you, it's like, oh yeah, I got to figure out that. Think about that. So, but I think for people that are new on this call to this whole concept, there are ways to start small. Like, you don't have to be an expert here. And I think everybody's on a different learning curve, and everybody's on a different need curve as well. So there isn't an urgency for everybody to actually jump in and start building this stuff. So anyway, that was my takeaway. Any other questions for Will before we move on? Okay, let's keep rolling ahead. We've got a few more minutes and I want to get some time with Joe. Thank you so much, Will. That was awesome as always. And we will make sure that we get the slides out to everybody along with his presentation. So, and don't forget, if you have any other questions for Will, you can reach out to him at his website. Also, he has this awesome book that is a nice primer for everybody on the AI journey. So thank you, Will. All right, Joe, we're up. You're up first, actually. So as everybody knows, sorry, I shouldn't assume that. Microsoft platforms have these automatic updates that happen twice annually. They're called waves. and they happen in the spring and the fall. So we are literally on the heels of wave one, which will start rolling out in Canada. We always get it first, yay. So April 1st, we'll start seeing new features roll in automatically to various parts of Microsoft CRM, the Power Platform, all these different apps. So wave one is on our heels. I think the relaunch date in the States, don't quote me, is the 21st of April is when features start to roll out for US folks. And then there's geographic release dates and so on. So Joe Thomas is going to take us through areas of the contact center. And we always like to go through like, what are those features that jump out at you? This is an opinion. So when we certainly get to different sessions, we'll have different things. So Joe, I have your slides here. Do you want prefer to run the slides on your side?
If you don't mind, because I have notes and.
Okay, absolutely. I'll stop sharing here.
Awesome.
Okay, you're good.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. But I'll try and go quick before I get started. The need for speakers for these events is ever present, and
Yeah.
if I can make a pitch to whomever mentioned they were doing some work on XRM Toolbox, I would love for that person to talk about that, because I don't know, I speak for myself and pretty much anybody I ever come in contact with. We love XRM Toolbox. It's saved my butt any number of times, so I'll throw that out there. So thanks to Nancy, Vanda, and Tanya for all your leadership on the Doug community and for inviting me in today. So quick introduction. My name is Joe Thomas. And as you can see on the slide, I'm a member of Microsoft's Fast Track team for a little over 3 years now, specifically working with Dynamics Customer Service, or Contact Center, as it's called, and sort of all of its tangential elements. Personally, I've been working with Dynamics for 18 years, which sounds crazy when you say it out loud, but my first project was a Dynamics 1.2 to 3.0 migration. So been around for a hot minute, and the pace of innovation is rapid, I'll say that. So without further ado, before I go into I was going to say top 5 features, but it actually ends up being sort of top 6. And as Tanya mentioned, this is my opinion of the top 6, not Microsoft's opinion. So we'll get into that in a second, but I wanted to, if you don't have the Dynamics Release Planner bookmarked, do so. You can hit that QR code on the slide. My personal observations are that this is the most sort of accurate representation of all of these different features in sort of one place, because as I'm sure everybody who's been around a while, these dates have a tendency to move around a little bit. So I found that the people who are in charge of this do a pretty good job of keeping this up to date. So I keep it bookmarked. I refer to it all the time because the list of things that's coming, it's rapid. So, okay, so real quick, piggybacking on Will's presentation. So most of the items I'll talk about today are, well, not most, but half of them are considered AI features. And Will was spot on about the incredible importance of appropriating enough internal energy toward developing your organization's AI strategy. Almost all of the customers that I'm currently working with have gone so far as to initiate reorgs here in 2025 around the central theme of being able to more effectively accelerate their strategy. And at the risk of sounding like I'm just towing the company line in this topic, I go so far as saying that the organizations that have an effective AI strategy and are successful at implementing it are going to be the companies that thrive in the coming years. And I'll tentatively take the word thrive out, because I believe we're going to see a lot of organizations who might have been really good at their core competencies fail in this arena and get gobbled up or flat out go out of business. I think it's that impactful. The impact on productivity has been so dramatic that I don't know how some of these organizations from a cost structure perspective are going to be able to survive. So thank you, Will, for that. That was very insightful. And I'm going to read your book. Looks very cool. So the features I'm going to cover real quick. The first three are the sort of first three kind of autonomous agents that are being published by Microsoft. And then Microsoft Teams as telephony, a little one called one-click presence update. And then my bonus feature is maintaining routing rules in bulk. Some of them I have screenshots for, some of them I don't. So I know we have limited time here. I'll get started with the case management agent. So this is not coming in the April. It's going to be GA in May 2024. So essentially, here's your Dynamics interface. Upon getting a live chat, or assigned to a live agent, the case management agent will create the case. As the chat continues, it will update fields along the way. So you'll see these AI notifications that the case is created from the chat. You'll see the conversation summary from the chat available within the UI. You'll see highlights, and you'll see, I don't have a good screenshot of it there, of suggested actions. Fields are automatically updated. So Copilot or GPT-4o is analyzing the text of the transcript in the chat and pre-filling data in fields instead of copying, pasting, and having to manually type things in. It's extracting out a description. And lastly, once your case is input, and this is to me the kind of the coolest part, the case management agent is sort of, I hate to use the word watching because that can be a little creepy, but it's maybe monitoring the case. And then within your customer service workspace inbox, it's going to make recommendations like, hey, it's time to reply to this customer. It's going to suggest replies. It's going to author emails for you based on, the contents of that specific case. And you can even set it up to, if there's an SLA associated with the case, for example, and the SLA is waiting on something from the customer, you can set the case management agent to just automatically communicate with the customer, reminding them of things. And this is, I'll say, maybe a little bit of a departure from the Copilot and AI features that we've rolled out thus far, because there really is a buffer. There's always a human buffer between the AI and, and our customers. But there are some tasks which maybe previously have kind of been automated in a hard-coded kind of way, but now we're having AI be able to have that more conversational experience and help manage these agents. All right, so.
Hey, Joe, we have a
Yes.
question. Do you mind taking a question?
Not at
Candark has
all.
a question.
Yes.
Hi, Joe. If
Hi.
you go 2 slides back, and I struggled with this when I was playing with this agent, customer service agent. We did early adoption for one of our clients to get these updates. And it does create case based on the chat, but you see the origin, it puts phone as a default. And there seemed to be no chat as origin for this case. So we had to add a custom chat as an option.
Are you talking about like the native origin field? It wouldn't fill that one out?
Yes, that one, the native origin field. It puts it into phone, and on your next screen, I notice maybe it's a different case, but origin was blank. So we had to put some customization around it to make sure that anything that got created from chat shows up as chat as origin, because it's a key field to have different SLAs and routing rules to be applied on.
That's interesting. I think our contact information will be in this call. Ping me. Did you guys open up a ticket for that? Because I thought you could configure. Okay, that's interesting.
We haven't, but maybe you can pass the message to the product team in Microsoft.
Sure. Did you guys were involved in the public preview? For this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I ping me because I'm interested to know who the I'll say who the customer.
I'm sure somebody would have noticed it as well, and maybe in general
that's
availability, they would have fixed it. But
yeah, those preview features, like, it's funny because I mean, when it comes to implementing Dynamics, I'm kind of when I was in the partner turn, I was kind of, I'll say a cowboy a little bit in the sense that I was willing to sort of take risks. But when it comes to preview features, like, I don't know, I'm super conservative about rolling those things out into production. I mean, I just get itchy about it because there's always some little, you know, there's some little funky thing that pops up. So, yeah, for sure. Thanks for that feedback.
So
No
let's
worries.
take that one offline. Joe, you
Yeah.
have 3 more minutes. You guys.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, perfect. So the next, these are 2 agents. I kind of lumped them into one, the customer intent agent and the knowledge agent. So essentially, while the agent is working on an escalation, the intent and knowledge agents are monitoring the chats and the emails for these escalations, as well as the summaries and the content within the cases themselves. And I have the resolution in there as well. So the agent captures these in what is exposed to the user as intents. And I mean, this is a basic table in Dynamics, but the intents are captured within the library. And then the agent automatically drafts either an article or makes suggestions to existing knowledge articles based on solutions, based on cases that are resolved and the solutions that were deployed to successfully resolve those. Most of the customers I work with either they spend a lot of time, energy, and effort keeping their knowledge base up to date, or they don't at all and their knowledge base is wildly out of date. So in either of those situations, the intent and knowledge agents, I think, go a long way to just vastly increasing productivity. The agent recommends drafts. You can go ahead and review it, you know, and you can see down the bottom it has the revise with instructions. So this is the typical sort of AI chat interface where you can conversationally tell it what changes you want to make. So these are some powerful things to check out. If you check out that release planner, there's more details in there and there's a lot of stuff coming. So my last
those
3
2 items you have are GA in April, is what I understand too.
Well, the case management, I think, is GA in May.
Oh, excuse me, May. Excuse me, you're right.
Yes.
GA in May, and then customer knowledge management agent is GA April.
Correct.
Okay.
So these 3 features are also May. I only have one sort of slide presentation or picture here, but the first bullet point is Microsoft Teams as telephony. And I love this. Everybody I know, every customer I use or work with uses Microsoft Teams, whether it's, you know, we're using it today, right? So it's pretty ubiquitous. Everybody's pretty familiar with it. I think it's solid as a rock. So being able to leverage the underlying architecture for Microsoft Teams as telephony, I think, is awesome. And from a user interface perspective, if a customer is already on voice in some capacity, they can always switch to Microsoft Teams. The user interface for your agents doesn't change. It's the same WYSIWYGs that are embedded within the app, just with the underlying architecture of Teams. So I think that's pretty exciting. The second one is actually my favorite out of all of these, just because I don't know, a customer service nerd, but it always bothered me within the customer service workspace. In order to change your presence from one to the other, it was actually 4 clicks, which was crazy to me. So, you know, 1 to get the presence, 2 to get the drop down, 3 to select which one you're in, and 4 to hit OK. So I thought that was crazy. I didn't have a screenshot of or couldn't quickly find a screenshot for what the new one's going to look like, but I'm told it's going to be a 1-click present update, which is pretty cool. And then lastly is to maintain routing rules in bulk. So if you have, I've got a lot of customers who have, you know, sometimes hundreds of queues. Maybe they have different brands, different email addresses, you know, all this stuff is coming in. And so if you have those hundreds of queues, you may have to maintain different a rule for each one of those within the customer service admin center. And a lot of times they're just identical. So it's just save and create. And that's a big maintenance effort on the back end. Maintaining routing rules in bulk. This feature is going to sort of leverage a template feature. So if you still have to create a rule for each of those, but you can create it based on a template. And then it's not enabled in my environment, so I haven't been able to actually play around with it, but I'm told that if you make updates to the template for these rules, and it'll propagate to the existing rules that are that were created based on that template. So I've seen customers spend a lot of time and a lot of hours, not just creating all of those, but maintaining them going forward. So one of my favorite features. These may not be your favorite features, but go on that release planner, click through. There's some pretty cool stuff coming down the pike. And my last comment is this, all of the sort of AI related features, the conversation I'm having with my customers is as follows. Get away from your traditional change management process for Dynamics. And what I mean by that is maybe a line of business comes to you and says, hey, I need a couple of new custom fields, or I need my form redesigned. That change management and future planning for your Dynamics application, there's still going to be some of that traditional kind of updates, but that should now be done within the context of sort of what Copilot or AI features sort of within that context, because a lot of these, the case management agent, these things are going to get bigger. They're going to be automating a lot more tasks. And so instead of thinking about things in the old school sort of database mindset, think of them on, is there a way I can kind of automate this task using AI? Because the universe is wide open with use cases that can be affected by this. And that's my 2 cents. I think that's my last slide. Yep. Thank you very much.
Joe. Thank you. That's really awesome. Really appreciate it. I know we're at the top of the hour, so I'm just going to skip ahead to just wrapping up, if you guys don't mind. Everyone has to get on with their day. So we have a couple of sessions. Again, this is a monthly meetup. This one's, the audience is geared towards the power users, the decision makers sort of thing in your firm. So we like to encourage those folks to join us. So next session is April 24th. And then after that, we'll do May 22nd. So the May one will be after DynamicsCon in Chicago. So we can maybe compare notes on that session as well. And then if you wouldn't mind just taking a snapshot of the feedback survey. Will told me there's too many questions, so I'm going to have to tighten it next time. So thank you everybody for coming today. We really appreciate your time. And if anybody has any topics they'd like to suggest as well, we loved hearing for new ideas. We do sort of sunset this in the summertime, and then we'll come back again. Vonda, remind me, do we have a June session?
We do. Yeah.
We have a June session, and then we pause for July and August, correct?
Back September.
Yeah, perfect.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks to all the presenters today. Always awesome. I always learn so much from this Brainiac trust that we build here. So thank you, everybody. And we'll look forward to seeing you in April. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.